A 1% fee takes 30% of everything you make. Not 1% of it, 30. And nobody quotes it that way because 1% a year sounds like a rounding error and 30% of your life's investment gain does not. That is the same fee, described honestly. Here is why the small number is the one you hear. 1% gets quoted once as an annual figure, next to returns of 8 or 9%. Against those it reads as noise. But run it for 30 years and it takes 26% of your final balance. And 26% of the balance is 30% of the gain, which is the number that actually matters, because the money you put in was never the market's to give or take. Only the gain was ever at stake. 3 things I want to show you. How the fee gets that big, what it costs on a real amount of money, and then the part 1 did not expect. What happens when you compare the fee to the mistake it is supposed to stop you making? The mechanism is that the fee is charged on the balance, not on the gain. Every year, including the years you lost money, and on the compounding as well as the capital, which means the fee compounds against you in exactly the way your returns compound for you. This is the median real value of $1 across every starting month since 1871. At no fee, 30 years turns $1 into $7.14. At 1%, $5.29. At 2%, $3.91. 2% is not an exotic number, by the way. A 1% fund held inside a 1% advised account gets you there, and that arrangement is extremely common. And the share taken keeps rising the longer you hold, which is the opposite of what most people assume. Holding longer does not dilute a fee. It feeds it. At 10 years, 1% takes 19% of the gain. At 20, 25. At 30, 30. At 40, 36. Follow the 2% line to the right-hand edge. 40 years, and the fee has taken 59.9% of everything the market gave you, more than half of the gain, to the person who charged it. Put it on an amount you can picture. $10,000. 30 years. Inflation adjusted. So this is real purchasing power, not a number that flatters itself. With no fee, $71,362. With a 1% fee, $52,859. $18,500. Gone to a number that was quoted to you once as 1%. Now, I could stop there, and that is where most videos about fees do stop. But it would be dishonest, because there is a real argument on the other side, and it is not the one about picking better funds. It is this: a fee is only a pure loss to someone who would have behaved anyway. If you are the sort of investor who sells everything at the bottom of a crash, then the comparison is not the fee against zero. It is the fee against what those sales cost you. So the question is not whether 1% is expensive. It is, how big a mistake does it have to prevent before it has paid for itself? That is answerable, so I answered it. Here is a panicking investor. The market falls by some amount. They sell everything into cash. They sit there, and later they buy back in. I did not want to pick the settings, because the settings decide the answer. So all 12 are here. Sell after a 20, 30, or 40% fall, and buy back after 6, 12, or 24 months, or once the market has bounced 20% off its low. Cash is assumed to keep its full purchasing power while it sits, which is generous to the person panicking, so everything here understates what the mistake costs. The red line is the fee. 1% a year for 30 years, measured exactly the same way. Every single bar is to the left of it. On these numbers, one panic sale costs less than the fee does. So the fee needs to prevent more than one. How many more? I ran it. An investor who panics up to 8 times over 30 years against an investor who pays the fee and never panics, and found where the two cross. At 3 basis points, the sort of fee a broad index fund charges, it pays for itself almost immediately. Every one of the 12 settings. At 1%, in 10 of those 12 settings, it never pays for itself at all. And I want to be precise about what never means, because it is stronger than it sounds. The market only serves up between 1.3 and 5.5 of these falls in a 30-year stretch, and the simulation lets you panic at every single one of them. 10 of 12 means panicking every time the market fell for 30 years still left you ahead of paying 1%. At 2%, it is 11 of 12. Two things this does not settle, and I would rather say them than have you find them. The first is uncomfortable. Panicking more is not reliably worse. Selling into a fall that keeps falling can help you. So two panics sometimes beat one. The headline survives that because the wobble is around 1% against a fee effect of 26. But the precise break-even counts do not, and you should read them as approximate rather than exact. The second is the bigger hole. This models someone who sells and comes back. It does not model someone who sells in 2008 and is still in cash in 2016 or who never returns at all. For that person, the arithmetic flips completely, and the fee could be the cheapest thing they ever bought. I cannot measure that from price data because it is a fact about people rather than about markets. Which leaves the actual question, and it is not the one about fees. If you would have held anyway, 1% a year is close to a pure transfer. Over 30 years, it is 30% of everything you made, handed over for a service you did not need. If you are someone who sells at the bottom and then stays out, it may genuinely be the best money you spend. So the decision is not, is 1% expensive? It is, which of those two am I? And here is the uncomfortable part. Almost everyone believes they are the first sort. The evidence most people have for that belief is that they have never been tested because they have never held anything through a real crash. If you have been, you already know your answer. If you have not, then paying for insurance against yourself is not stupid. It is just expensive, and now you know exactly how expensive. These are the assumptions. Change any one of them and the number changes, which is the point. The code and the PIN dataset are linked below. The one most likely to move the answer is the cash assumption, so change that first and tell me what you get. I am not a financial advisor and none of this is advice about your money. It is a simulation of what happened, with every input on screen. Next time, everyone says renting is throwing money away. I tested it in 100 American cities.